my name is Aline Umutoni. I am originally from Rwanda, East Africa. I am 32 years old. I am an author of my first book called From Bondage to Freedom: How God Turned My Pain into a Purpose and My Mess into a Message. It's a memoir about my story because I am a genocide survivor of the genocide against Tutsi of 1994. And I'm also a sexual abuse survivor. So I wrote this book as a memoir and an autobiography to share my story and share the process that it took me to go from bondage to freedom, and how God turned my pain into purpose, and how He gave me a sense of purpose and destiny. So yes, and that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to discuss more about the book. Thank you. So I wrote the book for two reasons. Because as a survivor of anything, any pain, like that, you don't have to have gone through the genocide to survive anything. You can survive a divorce, you can survive pain, you can survive rejection, abandonment. One of the most important things to do is actually being able to talk about it, speak about it, like being able to reiterate what happened. And most of the time in Africa, they tell you, oh, you don't have to share your kind of story. You don't have to share your kind of things. It's supposed to be from within. So I was surrounded by people that they wanted me to be, some of them wanted me to be healed but not share my stories. Others wanted me to be healed and share my story. But I encountered Christ. So for me, I can't really talk about what was the process of me writing the book without mentioning my faith, because my faith not only gave me the freedom that I have today, but my faith in God actually gave me the courage to be able to share my story. Because writing a biography it's not like writing a fiction, because it's about your life. And it's like literally being vulnerable to the whole world, because my book is translated in 17 languages. So I don't have any control of who's going to read my book. I don't have any control of who's going to have the knowledge of what happened to me. So I had to get to a place where God had to first heal me. God has to first mend my heart, my broken heart. And then once He finished the process of my healing, he told me, okay, I'm going to use your story as a living testimony to help other people to overcome their pain, to come out of the victimhood, and being able, instead of living a victim life, living a life of a victorious person, not only surviving but thriving. So I went from a place of surviving every day to a place of thriving every day, from a place of not being able to do anything to a place of having so much joy that I can actually encourage other people to hope again and trust again. So I wrote this book first to heal, because the writing process allowed me also to heal. It allowed me also to know more about the goodness of God, because writing your story, it's like going back to the trigger, the trauma, and reliving it, living it again. And it was not an easy process, but I saw the faithfulness and the goodness of God throughout. So it was not an easy process, but it helped me first to heal. And then secondly, God used that story to be able to bring people hope and allow and encourage other people to know that, you know what, at the end of the pain is not the end of it. Like, pain is not the end of your life. God can use your pain and turn it into a purpose. Today, if somebody would tell me, will you change anything in your story? I would say absolutely not. Though I lost my dad and my mom. I lost my mom when I was 13 months, and my father was killed in a genocide against Tutsis of 1994, and I was 5 years old at that time. So all of these things, I witnessed it. I had a very traumatic childhood, but I wouldn't change anything for the world, because it shaped the person that I am today. It shaped the woman that I am today. Today, I can tell you that it was good for me that I was afflicted. I wouldn't change the abuse, the sexual abuse that I had from the age of 16 to 19. So I wouldn't change anything about my story, because God took every pieces of it, mended me, and made me who I am today. So yes, writing was very tough and very hard, but it was necessary for me to go from a place of brokenness to a place of wholeness, but also use like the experience and what I gained to be able to give those tools for other people to also experience freedom. So just a little bit about my story. So I was born on October 20th, 1988. I was born from two parents that had two different backgrounds. My country has three tribes. We have the Hutus that were the majority of the tribe, and we had the Tutsis, and then Twa. So there was contingency between the Hutu tribe and the Tutsis from way back before 1994. There was the first genocide, was not actually 1994. The first genocide happened in the 1950s, around 1959, where they started killing Tutsi families. And some of my family members actually went into exile during that season, but my grandfather stayed behind with my dad. So my dad met my mom when he was in college. So my dad was Tutsi, and my mom was half Tutsi, half Hutu. Her mom was Tutsi, and then her dad was Hutu. So when they met in college. My dad was finishing his medical studies, and my mom was studying agronomy. So they fell in love, and of course they were from two different backgrounds. My mom's dad was a lawyer for the Hutu president at that time, and he was in politics, and he was very wealthy, well established. While my father was the only the only child who went to college, his dad was a modest father. So it was two complete background, like two extreme background. So it was impossible for them to actually be together, like close to impossibility. But they fell in love and they started dating, and then my mom found herself pregnant. And because my country is very conservative, she was convinced that her dad would never allow her to get married with my dad. So she tried to, end the relationship. But, her father actually was like, you know what, I can't let you just have a child out of wedlock. So we're going to allow you to get married to this man since he's a doctor. Because my dad was done with his medical study and had started to practice as a doctor. So they got married on July 31st, 1988, and I was born October 20th, 1988. So a few months later, I was born. 13 months, on November 7, 1989, my mom was on her way to Kigali. Kigali is the capital city. So we were living in a second city called Butare at that time. So my mom wanted to go for an errand in Kigali, and that day she just decided she wanted to take me with her because I was still a little girl. But last minute she was like, you know what, I'm gonna leave her behind because I'm just gonna do an errand and be back. So she asked for a lift because she didn't have a car at the time, and there was a priest that was a friend of my dad and her, and who was Tutsi, and she asked him if she can ride with him, and he agreed. But that person, that priest, was actually he was like an activist. He was a journalist in the opposition party. And also, I want to mention my dad was the chairman of the opposition party at the time. So he was the chairman of the Liberal Party in the city where we were. So he was also involved in politics, but not the politics of the government. He was fighting the government. He was fighting against the government because at that time the ideology of the genocide had already started. So they had a lot of discrimination against the Tutsis. And in my book, I mentioned about the Hutus 10 Commandments. They had 10 Commandments on how not to treat Tutsis and stuff like that. So my dad was really like fighting against the rights for Tutsi to have like education, equal opportunities and things like that. So the priests, they wanted to kill the priests. They wanted to, they had planned to actually murder the priests. And they actually had planned an ambush outside of the city to emulate an accident and kill the priest. When my mom was in the car with the priest, so my mom was in the passenger seat with the priest. So my mom and the priest were instantly killed with few other people that were in the car that very day. Now you can imagine, I was raised by my dad alone from the age of 13 months until 5 years. So I was very close to my dad. I had a great relationship with my dad. I remember everything about him to this day. I remember his smile. I remember him singing to me. He was very, very, very involved in my life. And many people actually even told me the same thing. Say I was just his motivation. He was living for me. He just did everything for me to be able to not miss anything. Though I missed my mom, but he made sure that I was really, really surrounded with love and everything. So he was raising me with the help also of my grandmother, my mom's mom. But in 1994, the genocide started in Rwanda. On April 7th, genocide started in Rwanda. But in the city where we were, the genocide didn't start automatically. It started at the end of April. So my dad was, he had an opportunity to run away and fly and take me and go to Europe in a safe place. But he wanted to stay behind and help Tutsi people to be able not to be killed. And he was also convinced that because of the relationship, because he had married into a Hutu family, and that was also powerful, he could be actually protected by them, which was his main mistake. So at that time he was also engaged and about to get married. So he was supposed to get married to his second wife, who had the same name as my mom. I don't know if that's the reason why they fell in love. I don't know, but she was also, my mom's name is Claudine. Her name was also Claudine. And so he didn't want to leave her behind. So he was like, you know what, if I'm here, at least I can protect her and her family. But unfortunately, Claudine and her family and siblings burnt alive their house. So the following day after that happened, he had lost all hope. At that moment, he was just, what's the point? I lost my first wife. Now I'm losing my fiance and her family. You know what? So he took me and he ran to his in-laws, my relative on my mother's side. They were very, very, the house where we ran to hide, it was actually very extremist Hutus family. It's an extremist Hutu family that was living there. So we ran there and we stayed there. I don't know for how long, but we stayed there. And that's where they came to kill my dad. So one normal day, the day that changed my life for the worst. We were playing. I remember very well, like it was yesterday. I was playing with my dad, and then there was a knock at the door, and all of a sudden, I just saw my face, that father's face completely changed. Like he went from smiling and playing to like a very serious face. So he took me in the room and he put me under the bed and he told me very, very, very strictly, he said, I don't want you to leave until I come and get you. So of course, when you have a hero, because my dad was like my hero as a little girl, so I knew he was serious, but I just obeyed. Like, I was curious, like, as a child, you always want to know what's on the other side, which was the worst mistake I made. So I was looking under, but I could only see the feet of the people. So there were three men that came to on that door. Two of them were arrested, and one of them wasn't. So the two that were arrested, they gave their testimony at the Gachacha court. Gachacha court was a court that was installed right after the genocide to convict the genocide perpetrators. So the two killers, actually, two of the three were arrested, so they shared that part of the testimony. So they came, they knocked at the door, and they just were like, oh, we are here to kill you. And my dad, with his confidence, is like, who sent you? And then they told him, oh, this person sent us. And then he's like, oh, that's my friend. Please, before you do whatever you came to do, let me write him a letter, take it to him, and if he sends you back to come and kill me, just come back. And my dad never came back to where I was. So they went back. They gave the letter to that person, and of course that person said, oh, go and kill him. So they came back to kill him, and they started cutting him to pieces. When I say cutting him to pieces, it's not shooting him. I really wish they had just shot him and he had fallen on the floor and died. But Dad did not die, and not death. He was cut to pieces. I saw things that I can barely describe. But I sweat. I heard my dad scream until he could not scream anymore. Then they took him away. Then I stayed there, petrified, mortified, afraid. I was afraid to breathe, because I told myself, if I breathe, they will hear me. If I breathe, they will know that I'm there. Then a few minutes later, after they finished doing what they did to him and throwing him in a place that they refused to tell us to this day, they came back for me. So they went to tell the person that they finished the work. And then the person was like, oh, what about the little girl? Then there was no little girl, like, oh, go back and look. So they went back, and they came back to look, and they looked, they couldn't find anything. And they were coming towards the bedroom. And before they could get into the bedroom, the third person who was not arrested was outside, and he's like, oh, just leave this little cockroach. They used to call us cockroaches. Just leave this little cockroach. If she's not dead, she will end up dead. That was the first time I heard somebody calling me a cockroach, because I didn't grow up. I didn't even know that I was Tutsi. I didn't even know. So I went from being an innocent girl to a cockroach. You can imagine how it feels. So I stayed under the bed. I don't know for how many hours. All I remember, I was thirsty. I was hungry. I was scared, and I didn't know where was my dad. Then a lady came, the sister of those people that killed my dad, actually came to see if we had survived. So when she opened the door, she saw blood. She thought, oh, it's over, they killed them. But she said something told her to come in the room, and something told her to look under the bed, and she saw me. And she took me under the bed, she fed me, then she took me to a family. And yes, and there's more book. I just don't want to talk a lot about it because it's very heavy for me. I'm trying not to, actually, it's the grace of God that I'm sharing all of this without tears. It's not easy. Yes, so the trauma was not just that. The trauma was, to be honest, I always tell people that the genocide to me was, it's like, you have a bomb or like a dynamite or something like that, and you open the top, but it doesn't explode. but it's going to explode, but it has not exploded. So for me, the genocide was like that, because as a little girl, I saw traumatic things. I saw people being raped. I saw people, literally, I saw the unthinkable. Like, it's in my book. Like, I saw the unthinkable. But that was not the trauma. The trauma actually was reacted after the genocide. When I was finally safe, when I was out of Rwanda, I found myself in a refugee camp in Uganda. And at that moment, when I was surrounded with people that had one hand, that had, that had external scars, and me, I had internal scars, because I was not raped, I was not abused, I was not cut, there was no sign of physical pain. But what I had seen was enough to make me actually traumatized. I was traumatized about anything and everything. I was traumatized, like anything. A knife would traumatize me. A fork would traumatize me. Boots would traumatize me. Like, anything would traumatize me. I had PTSD. I couldn't sleep at night for many years. I had to go to therapy. Then at 11, so my grandmother, the one who raised me from the time my mom was killed until 1994, we were reunited, because she also was running for her life, because she could see. We were united in a refugee camp. So I bonded with her. She became all that I had. She became my safe place. She became the person that I was looking up to. And when I turned 11, she passed away. She passed away when I was 11. So now you can imagine loss after loss after loss. So it made me grow cold. It made me grow cold. I had an anger issue. I was very angry at the world. I was a very angry teenager until I encountered Christ. I gave my life to Jesus when I was 14. I was in boarding school. I share more in the book how it happened. I went from feeling betrayed by my family on my mother's side, because actually the third person who killed my dad came to the country where I was, lived with me 3 years, and I didn't know it. So you can imagine how traumatic it feels, and betrayal you can feel, and even your own family actually has betrayed you. Like, betrayal is very painful, but when betrayal happens to people that you trust the most, it makes you actually shut down. So I had shut down. So I went from being an orphan to being accepted in the kingdom of God, from having no mother to having so many mother people or mother figures that I could look up to. But that didn't stop actually the pain, because I was sexually abused 2 years after I gave my life to Jesus, which is also another traumatic event that happened in my life. So I had to go through pain, healing. But I can say my book, From Bondage to Freedom, is really not to portray me as a victim, because I never see myself as a victim. I never see myself as an orphan. I never see myself as a sexual abuse person. I never see myself as a genocide victim. I see myself as a conqueror. Everything that has happened to me, I used it to I didn't waste it. I actually used it to advance the kingdom of God. Everything that the enemy would throw at me, I would take those stones and I will mold and I'll build a tower for the glory of God. So that's what I see myself. And that's why I wrote this book, to tell people, you don't have to waste your pain. You don't have to sit down and say, oh, woe is me, I don't have anything, look at my life, I didn't have a good. If there's anybody in this world that should complain, I think I need to get the trophy for that, because I was in many countries, not because I like traveling, because I was just sent back and forth to whoever will want me, because I didn't have a father or a mother. I was mistreated from a young age. I was abused. I was betrayed. I was lied upon. I like anything that you can think of bad, I went through it. Seriously, literally, I went through it. But I don't want it to reflect my identity, because my identity is not my pain. Christ is my identity. I am who God says I am. I am who God says I am. I can do what God says I can do. And if God calls me loved, if God says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, if God says that I can do all things through him, if God tells me that I'm whole, then the enemy cannot lie to me. And I had to get to a place of loving me, of embracing my pain, embracing my past, and not embracing my past as shame. So my journey from bondage to freedom. Well, freedom is work. I always tell people that freedom is something that even in politics, even for a country to go from independence to from a colony to independence, it has to go. You have to work. You have to work towards that. So freedom is work, and I always tell people that you have to be committed to your freedom, like to become free. Like it's a decision. Like you have to decide. It's a decision. It's a personal decision. Nobody can decide it for you. Nobody can decide it for you. You have to make a decision. The first step is actually accepting that you're not okay. You know, we are in a world where we wear masks, you know. Unfortunately, now we are wearing physical masks because of COVID-19. But even before that, before COVID-19, we were wearing actually like invisible masks, but really masks, because people like to mask to show the best of themselves. Like social media has taught us to always like bring forth the best and just like hide the back. So you can see somebody on social media thinking that they are successful, they are happy, they don't have any problem because they're wearing a mask. They are showing us what they want us to see, but they are not showing us that, you know, they are depressed, they are suicidal, they are, you know, they feel low about themselves and everything like that. So as mentioned earlier, I live in many countries, in 22 countries in total. And it was not, like I said, it was not that a decision of leisure. It was a decision of being just sent from one place to another. So during the genocide, after the genocide, I found myself in Uganda. I never come. Then from Uganda, I went to West Africa, where I've been to most of the countries in West Africa. Then I did my primary school, secondary school, and then my first degree in Burkina. Then after that, I went to South Africa to do my second degree in geology. Then after that, I went to Rwanda for a few months to do my internship. Then I came to America to pursue my studies, and now I'm working in America. In all those movement from one place to another, of course, I had to be exposed to the culture of the country and the culture of the people. So people who know me, they always say, you know, some of them say, oh, this one, she's white because she has a white mentality, because I've lived in white countries. Or somebody would say she has no culture, because they can't put me in a box. They can't say, oh, Aline actually react like this like a Rwandan, for example, or Aline react like this, because though I am Rwandan and I'm probably Rwandan, I'm literally, to me, I feel like my best nationality, because I have more than one nationality, but my favorite of all is Rwandan, because where I was born. That's my favorite nationality that I can say. But I don't have, because I didn't grow up in Rwanda. I don't have the culture of Rwanda. Though I'm learning to know more about the culture of Rwanda, but I don't have that, because I didn't grow up in East Africa. I grew up in West Africa. Now, the West Africa culture is completely different than the East African culture. So I can say the West African culture has like mostly like really like shaped a little part of me, more part of me than anything. But I also live in South Africa, which is completely different than East Africa or West Africa. It's more open, more, it's like America basically. So I can say the being exposed to all of these things, all of these things all together allowed me to actually not have a human culture to actually build myself into. So it allowed me to be outside of the box. So nobody can put me in a specific box and say she's reacting like this because of that, because I've been raised in so many countries, so they can't really put me in a box. So that allowed me, the multicultural actually allowed me to have my own culture. So I can say I'm building my own culture. Like I feel like when I'm having my kids, because I don't have I don't have biological children yet, but I am praying to have them soon. So once I have my kids, I am going to give them a culture that is actually like a buffet from all the culture that shaped the person that I have. But most of it, the culture that I have and the culture that leads me is the culture of kingdom of God, is the culture of the kingdom. And as I said earlier, I am so in love with Jesus that my life is so intertwined with him that culture is the culture of the kingdom of God. Everything that I do, everything that I say, it may sound like I'm a preacher or a pastor, but I just love Jesus. So every time I talk, it's like preaching. So the culture has really shaped me. And also the advantage that culture gave me, the multiple culture, it allowed me to not ashamed of my faith or of my state. Because if I had grown up in East Africa, for example, or West Africa, for example, and just gotten one culture, in certain countries that I lived, being sexually abused is a taboo thing. It's something that you don't share to everybody. You don't share to anybody. So I would have actually stopped me from sharing my story. There are people, family relatives, that are not happy for me to share the fact that I was actually sexually abused. My dad was my hero, and he's still my hero. Uh, uh, I'm in the process of writing his memoir, his biography, because in the process of writing my book, I had to do some research about my dad, about what he did, his political insight, what he's done to the community where he lived and everything. And he impacted so many lives. To this day, many people actually know about what he's done. And my dad was a visionary. That's what they tell me. So I'm glad I got that gene of him, because I'm a visionary too. My dad was, every time I close my eyes and I think about him, he was my joy. He smile, and his smile gave me a sense of peace and protection. I felt protected anytime I would see his smile. Remembering my dad is one of the things that is hard, because it reminds me of the powerlessness that I felt being under the bed and not knowing what to do, being under the bed and not having any help for that, and wishing that somebody can come and stop it. I remember him hoping that nobody will ever feel what I felt, or nobody will ever go through a genocide. My prayer and hope is that no country experience what we experienced. For me, the writing process took me 3. So I started December in 2017, and I ended March 21st, 2018. So around 3 months and few weeks. It was commitment. I committed myself. So I was a day, 5 days a week. So I was committed to just like 8 hours a day. It was a commitment, and because I'm a type A person, I push myself to limits. So it was very hard, very moving, very, 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 very hard. But after writing, that the thing is, the first step is writing the book, right? You finish writing the book, you have a manuscript, then what? Like, you don't know what to do, because it was my first time writing a book. So I had to now start looking in the process of looking for a publisher. I already had started reading articles about publishers and stuff like that. I had already, like I say, I'm a visionary. I had already like envisioned my book to go to not only be available on Amazon. I wanted it to be available in every store online, in every online store in the world. Because again, I lived in 22 countries. I wanted at least the 22 countries that I lived in to, they could have a book. They could have access to my book. And some of them don't have Amazon aligned to them. So I wanted to make sure that I have that for people to have access to books. So I looked around, and of course, applied, and it was no. So 18 was, doors were closing, like literally shut for me. So I just kept on receiving no and no and no. And because I didn't want to also sell my royalties, because I wanted to have my own royalty, have the power to change anything in my book, have the power to self-publish it, but not self-publish it by myself, finding a self-publishing company that will help me publish my book. So it's only I tell you, I was done March 21st, 2018. But I found my publisher on March 15, 2019. So it took a whole year of no and no and no. I was frustrated. I had gotten to a place where you can imagine, I read this book, read. I have like 10,000 a version of my book, seriously. But it made me, like, even people started telling me, it has become an idol. You only talking about this. Stop. But you know what? Because I had very few, 2 people that were my close friend, that believed in me. You don't need 1,000, you just need 1 or 2 that believed in. They kept on pushing me. They say, even if they say no, you will find somebody, you will find the right publisher. So then on March 15, I found Westbrook Press, which is my publisher. Westbrook Press is a subdivision of Zondervan and Thomas Nelson. So it is a subdivision of the top 2 Christian publishing company in the world. It took a lot of no's to find the right yes. So I would say to an author or an upcoming author, don't be discouraged when you find the no's. Don't be discouraged when people say, no, we can't do this for you. Just keep on moving, keep on knocking at the door, and God will order you to the right person. And also choosing the cover. Like, I had a vision when I left the house of oppression, which is the place where I was sexually abused. I had a vision of myself putting my hand in the sun, and like as a sign of freedom. So I didn't want to take my own picture, because I wanted to have, like not a freedom, but like anybody, because I didn't write the book for me. I wrote the book for people to also identify themselves. This cover. So this is not me on the cover, but it's just a beautiful girl that is raising her hand in front of the sun. And at the back, I have a different cover. So it's a chain that is broken, because bondage is a chain. It holds you. Like, bondage is something. It can be addiction. It can be drugs. It can be unforgiveness, business. All of that is bondage. Bondage is not just being sexually abused or anything. Like, bondage is bondage. And you see, once it's broken, because of the sun, you see the sun comes, that hope coming in your life, and then you start soaring, but you actually are not the full potential. You are not yet at the full potential of yourself as an ego. Because I call myself an ego because I say those who hope in Lord will soar like eagles on wings like eagle. That's in Isaiah 40:31. It's one of my favorite scripture. So it's a process. Healing is a process. So these three ego shows at different sizes because healing is a process, and be willing to actually embrace the process and be transformed. So that's why I wrote the book. So I encourage, and my book is available everywhere books are sold online. You have it at Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, Target, anywhere books are sold online in the whole, it's available. But I also have signed copies that you can actually request your signed copy, and by sending me money to either PayPal or Stripe, or if you're in Africa, Stripe, PayPal, or World Remit, or yes, those are the main thing. By using my email address, alineum.booktour@gmail.com, and then you request a copy. And when you request a copy, the copy for Africa, in Africa is $30, then plus $20 shipping, which is $50 total. But if you are in America, it's $20 and free shipping because I'm in America. If you are outside of America, in Canada, it's $25 plus I think $5 in shipping, something like that. Sorry, I don't remember the exact price, but you can find all the details on my social media handles. And if you order a signed copy, I will sign your book just like I signed this one. You see, it's a signed copy, and then I give you gifts. So you will have a bookmark, and also a card with something for you, especially for you. So yeah, so that's what I can do. So you can have either a signed copy, or you can order my book on Amazon or any other website online. Reading was not something that I liked to do from a young age. No, absolutely not. I am a geologist by profession, and so I like science. I don't like literature. I used to really hate when I would have assignment to read a book, because I would just go and read the back, or find a summary online and read. But I started like to read actually when I think I turned 24, I remember, because I read a book that changed my life. It's called Commending Your Morning. It's by Dr. Cindy Trim. It's I would say it's a motivational / Christian book. And that book just literally wowed me. I was reading it and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, and there's a quote, I don't know if it was her or somebody else who said that there is somebody who said that if you want to hide something knowledge, put it in a book, and only the people that, I don't know if I think I paraphrased it, only the wise people will know because they read books. And I realized that actually reading books gives you knowledge. Reading books gives you more wisdom and understanding. And I started reading books. So I was very fascinated by a certain author. My favorite author of all, I read his books, is Dr. Miles Monroe. Dr. Miles Monroe was, I would say, a philanthropist, a preacher, motivational speaker, like name of it. Like, he had it all. Like, he would teach you on business, on wealth, on management, on Christianity, on relationship. Like, he would tackle every topic at all. So I think to this day, he's a role model. He's my mentor. Though he passed away in 2014, but He's my role model. Like every time I talk, I actually quote him a lot. I quote more than I quote anybody else because I've read a lot about him. I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh God, forgive me if I'm plagiarizing, like using something of him, because his knowledge is crazily unbelievable. But I love reading. So at this moment, I'm reading a book called "Don't Drop the Mic" by Bishop T.D. Jakes, and it's a good book for me as a preacher and as a motivational speaker. I like reading books of mentors that I look up to. So I like reading books that stimulate my thinking, stimulate my desire for knowing more. So yes, so I'm reading that. But on the side, I'm also reading another book called Intent to Deceive by Linda Melvin, and she's talking about the genocide against Tutsis that happened in my country, and how deniers what they are doing, and what's the intent. So I'm doing all these two books parallel all together because I like knowledge. Knowledge is something that we should all aspire to do. And knowledge is not found on TV. I tell people, you can watch a movie for 5 hours or 3 hours. You can watch back-to-back series, but sometimes you take a book and read it from front cover. It's very hard, but it takes commitment and a decision. Again, freedom is a choice, and freedom is a decision. Nobody will force you to be free. You have to make a decision to be free. And freedom starts in your mind. And for you to be free in your mind, you have to subject your mindset with a new thought, new mindset, new ways of seeing life, new ways of identifying life. It's one of the things that I had to subject myself by reading. So I love reading. I enjoy reading. I actually really love reading now. Before I hated it, and now I love it. I feel like for any person who has kids, like it's important to really like teach them from a young age, to like, give them like assignments to read. Like I was telling I was telling a friend of mine, I was like, I will have TV, but my TV will be for decoration, because my TV will not be like, I literally do have TV. I do have TV, but I actually don't really watch TV because I don't have time. I really don't have time. I work a lot. I write. I'm writing my 4th book as we talk right now. So it's something that I'm at the end of the day, I'm all over the place, and because I value my time. I value time, and reading books allows you to be a mindset that builds you. Not, it depends on also what you're reading. I don't like reading things that don't build me or challenge me. I like reading things that leave me wowed and leave me want to be the best version of myself. So that's what I do. Yeah. So in final take, why should you get from bondage to freedom? So well, I can say that they are 10,000 or 100,000 books about freedom, bondage, how to go from bondage to freedom. The difference, that what I can say, what I bring on the table that maybe I say that is unique to myself. Every story is unique. But this book is kind of like a manual, not actually when it's not reading from it's 25 chapters, but from chapter 14, there is a turn of it. Like it goes from narrative facts to actually also engage the reader, to also look at their life, so that they can also, by the time they get chapter 25, they can also experience freedom themselves. So this book is not only a biography. This book is also something that can help you enhance your research in finding freedom, true freedom, not the freedom that the world gives, but the freedom that is really felt from within. So this book is for every single person. And I was really amazed, to be honest. I was really amazed when this book was released, because the people that it attracted the most were not the people I expected. And that's what God does. God doesn't actually, he suppressed it. So it wasn't the people that I expected. The LGBTQ community, I don't have any problem with them. I love them because they are human beings, they're children of God. But I have more LGBTQ community actually who were impacted by book than Christians that actually gave more comment about this book. So to tell you, it's not a Christian book. That's why my book tour is never in church. I make sure it's in a hotel. It's a place that is very, very like nurturing, so that everybody who needs freedom, because it doesn't matter which level of religion or background or anyhow messed up you are, you need freedom. And nobody is who they are because they chose to be. Nobody. So this book is for every person experiencing pain or every person in this world, because whether or it you are experiencing pain now, pain is inevitable. You will face pain whether you like it or not. Pain is part of life. So this will help you in any season of your life. Thank you.